when you're working with a client, how do you help them define financial success? And what is your definition of that and or coaching them how to look at that the best way? Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
And now, back to the show.
Say goodbye to bickering over budgets and hello to winning financial strategies for couples. Join Kim and me as we lead a panel of financial experts in discussing practical tips and tools for couples to crush their financial goals and strengthen their relationship. Tim Scannell, a CPA with 34 years of experience, provides wealth management services to business owners. He joined Hightower in 2008 and founded Hightower Great Lakes in 2018. Their team offers customized portfolios, proactive planning, beneficiary preparation, and change anticipation, allowing business owners to focus on running their businesses. Shannon Weinstein is a CPA and fractional CFO for growth-minded business owners, offering relatable examples to simplify the financial side of business. She hosts the IRS Worst Dream podcast, Keep What You Earn, and is a frequent speaker in business coaching communities and masterminds. Aaron Thomas, a 2002 Harvard Law graduate, is a family law expert in Georgia, representing clients in divorce, custody, child support, and prenuptial agreements. He founded prenups.com, which focuses on creating fair prenups to prevent disputes and create happy marriages. Get ready to take control of your finances and build a stronger foundation with your partner. Welcome back, everybody, to the Kickass Couples Podcast. We are stoked to have an all-star panel with us today to talk about how we build a stronger future together and get into winning financial strategies for couples. We have three terrific panelists with us today. We have Shannon Weinstein. She's a fractional CFO for growth-minded business owners, a CPA, a teacher at heart, and her handle is financialsolutions.com. Shannon, welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
We're glad you're here. We also have joining us today, Aaron Thomas. Aaron is a top expert in family law, a divorce attorney, and he also started a new endeavor called prenups.com. And we're going to hear more about that in his time with us today. Aaron, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. And then Tim Scannell, a client-focused wealth manager and another CPA with over 34 years of experience. Tim, we are glad to have you in our midst.
Thank you for the opportunity. This is great. Thank you.
Great. Well, we are going to have some fun kind of getting into some issues that often trip a lot of individuals and couples up in their number one human relationship. But before we dive in and start with the questions, I would love to hear, and Tim, maybe if you'll start for us, give me your 30-second elevator speech, just so we can ground for our audience of what you do and what your take is on some of our talks today.
Sure. I've worked as a CPA and a certified financial planner for, like you said, 34 years. I've worked with hundreds of different couples at different stages of their life where we create wealth management plans and then help them kind of as an advocate for them, monitor and manage those plans. So that's really what I do. And I'm looking forward to this meeting. I think we focus on a lot of the same 14 principles that you guys do. And I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. All right, Aaron, I'm coming back down to you.
Yeah. I, like you said, I'm founder of prenups.com. I write prenups to help couples stay married. I am what you'd probably describe as a former marriage skeptic who has now been happily married for several years himself. And I take the lessons that I learned from having litigated over 1,000 divorces over the past 2 decades to help couples learn what to do and what not to do to build a foundation for successful and healthy marriage.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, Shannon, we're going to come around to you.
Hey, I'm Shannon Weinstein. I am a fractional CFO, as you mentioned, but I help people keep more of what they earn so they can achieve their life's goals, which also means aligning with that of their partner, their significant other, their family, and incorporating that into our business owner coaching. So the whole point of running a business is to make money, and the whole point of making money, hopefully, is to enjoy it and actually pass it on through wealth building. So that's one major why behind what we do.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Welcome, all of you. And I'm going to come right out of the gate and ask you, Shannon, why are financial issues so difficult in relationships? And why do they cause so much conflict within relationships?
I'd say financial topics are difficult, period. And then adding the complexity of discussing it with a partner, it's a very intimate topic. It really is. And it's a lot of source of insecurity. It's a lot of source of fear. And everyone has their own money story. And it's really hard to kind of carry that trauma on your back into a relationship and to kind of have to share it with that person. And there's a lot of insecurity that comes along with that. I just find that with a lot of couples, business owners alike, that everybody has their own association with money, what it means to them, if they see it as a hindrance or as a tool. And there's different attitudes, and you have to navigate that. And it's almost like a love language or communication. You may be saying completely different things to one another, trying to get to the same place and the same mission, but you're going about it differently because you speak a different language through money.
And Aaron, would you have anything to follow up with on that?
Yeah, I think Shannon makes a great point that, talking about money is so taboo in our society anyway. It's such a difficult topic to broach. And when you combine a relationship on top of it, your credit score isn't exactly first date material. Your credit card debt isn't exactly third date material. And it's difficult to find the right time to kind of break down that wall and be transparent about, what your views on your finances are.
And I love that transparency, right? That's huge when you get down the road a little bit in a relationship. Becoming transparent about things, and as you said, vulnerable about things, plays a big role in your relationship.
And Tim, what are your thoughts on that? About why do you think that financial issues are so difficult for the people that you talk with to approach and kind of get into?
Yeah, I like what Shannon said about their money story, their history, where they first learned about money. We also refer to like money personalities. I just think that people come to the relationship. Everyone's got such different skill sets, different ways of communication. I'm an internal processor. My wife's an external processor. Just all that mix makes it really hard for bringing up any major topic. And money is so important to the relationship. So I just reiterate what Shannon and Aaron both said too.
Beautiful. So I'm going to come back to you next, Aaron, and say, what pitfalls have you seen in your experience in the courtroom, but also in talking about prenups that occur most commonly when you work with clients on financial issues? Like, what are the big holes that most people seem to fall in?
Yeah, I think, a lot of it stems from not communicating about finances. People don't find it romantic or a sexy topic to broach. And as a result, both spouses go into their relationships with a lot of assumptions and things that aren't discussed. Are we setting up joint bank accounts? Are we keeping separate bank accounts? And without having, intentional conversations about what the financial relationship is going to look like, you can end up with a lot of imbalances and inequities. One thing that I've learned from, 1,000 divorce cases is that two spouses living in the same household, but in different socioeconomic classes doesn't work. It's a recipe for tension and resentment.
Great point. How about you, Tim?
Yeah, I think that communication is the big issue. Sometimes when we first meet with people, it's almost like it's the first time they've ever really talked about their philosophy of money and how emotional money is in the meeting. So like one of your key points, your 14 pillars, I think, is conflict and problem resolution. I'm not sure that a lot of people think about how to solve it or how to address it. I'm not a mediator. I'm not an attorney like Aaron, but I'll just say that oftentimes I'm in a meeting and I feel like I should have studied more psychology.
So people don't really know how, what I hear you saying is people don't know how to approach the subject. How do they start, or how do they get it out there? Or maybe they want to, but they're not sure how to jump in. So when any of you, kind of as a follow-up coming back, and then Shannon, I know we need to give you a chance, and maybe you could address this. When people don't know how to have that conversation, right? When you're thinking, oh no, they haven't really talked about this issue, or and I am trying to help them with something they haven't approached yet. How do you approach that, or what are some of your thoughts about that?
So I have an interesting approach to this, which I was going to mention is much like a prenup, which my husband and I did. We kind of came up with, we had almost a funny, hilarious hypothetical sit down while we got along great before we got married, and we thought, what are the ways we could screw each other? Like, what are the ways that this could go sideways? What are the ways this could go wrong in a hypothetical, hyperbolic way that was almost cartoonish? So, like, what are the ways that this movie could end badly? And it was all in imagination. It was not going to happen, but we said, what if we came up with all the silliest ways that we could have this go south? And then it actually was on the table. And then it was interesting because it's almost like we took the power away from all those situations, because we actually addressed it and said, if this happens, this is what we'll do. When we are clear-headed, when we love each other dearly. And I say the same thing when you have those conversations, is to bring up these conversations. Like I was thinking with Aaron with prenups, and you don't have the conversations until you need to have the conversations. And by then there's heightened emotion, there's tension, there's stress, there's anxiety. There's a lot of other things that come along with waiting. So I say, while you are at the happiest, have those conversations, because then you're thinking really clearly and you're looking out for the best interest of each other.
Yeah. So I hear you saying have a plan.
Yeah.
How about for you, Tim? If you were to sit down with two young people who have not or not married yet, what would some of that advice be?
Yeah, so one of the things that I find is that I can ask maybe questions, other advisors can ask questions, independent people can ask questions that maybe that are emotionally charged, like money, and that they're not comfortable asking. For example, I always joke that if my clients could tell my kids what to do, I would tell their kids what to do. They'd probably all do it, just because there's less emotion involved. But when I first meet with a couple that is like getting ready to be married, we go through a checklist and really talk about, what do you feel about credit cards or debt, for example? That's a really big one, because you find that some people walk into a marriage and they have no problem with debt. Other people just can't sleep with debt. So just asking about what their philosophy is about money, trying to identify what their personality is about money, not even really looking at the balance sheet at that point, but just getting a feel for how they think about it. I think that's more important up front.
Love that. And Aaron, would you follow up with anything with, a couple that comes into you, they're contemplating marriage, contemplating a prenup? What might you say to them?
Yeah, one of the great things about having a prenup, or at least going through the process of preparing a prenup, is that for it to be enforceable in pretty much any state in the United States, both spouses have to disclose all of their assets and debts to each other and their incomes. And just that process alone can be eye-opening for couples. I mean, today's marriage is just so much more complicated than it was for, my parents' generation or my grandparents' generation. My folks were married in the 1960s. And back then, people got married around age 21. They likely had one bank account between the two of them, no student loans, no credit cards, 401ks hadn't been invented yet. I mean, they were really like kind of a blank slate financially. Whereas the average couple who gets married today is closer to 29, 30 on a first marriage. And they likely have 4 or 5 bank accounts each, 3 or 4 credit cards each, a couple retirement accounts, maybe a small business, a home with some equity. And so, the couple that got married in the 1960s, it was like a startup in your garage, from a blank slate. Whereas the couple getting married today, it's like a corporate merger. And
it's complicated.
You're right.
It's way more complicated than we give it credit for. So yeah, just getting transparent about where you are. And, you've got a decade of financial habits since you moved out of your parents' house. That might be more important than all the assets and debts, that you bring into a relationship.
Yeah. So transparency, no hiding things. Let's just put it all out there. so that we're both clear on what we each have and what our history, our financial history might be.
That's exactly right.
Are you tired of feeling like you're living with a roommate instead of a lover? Do you miss the days when you were completely into each other, intellectually, emotionally, and physically? The truth is, many couples are struggling behind closed doors. Putting on a brave face for the rest of the world is exhausting. If you want to get back your joy, return to thriving, and take pleasure in your marriage, then Kickass Couples Coaching and Matthew P. Hoffman are here to help. Join us alone or with your partner and start taking steps towards overcoming the pain-filled obstacles and improving your relationship right now. For a limited time, we're offering a free relationship assessment call. Go to matthewphoffman.com/coaching to book your free call now so you can start making real changes in your most important relationship today. I love that. And I think that, you talk about asking the right questions, right, which give you visibility. And I loved what you said earlier, Shannon, when you said, having the conversations is the important part. And I think, couples struggle when there's conversations that they should have had and they never did. And bringing those things forward when things are going well, it's much easier to talk about as opposed to being in kind of that height of passion. And, I'm sure each of you, people come to work with you and people have varying ideas of what financial success is. So I'm curious, and Shane, I'll ask you to start if you don't mind. When you're working with a client, how do you help them define financial success? And what is your definition of that, or coaching them how to look at that the best way?
Yeah, it's so funny because I'll ask my clients constantly, what's your goal this year? And they'll say 2 million in revenue. I'm like, okay, why? What is that going to buy you? What is the point of that? And then they realize that their goals, their financial success or their goals, the ways that they're measuring themselves are actually just based on some type of growth from last year or whatever someone else is doing or someone else's definition of success. And when we really get to the root of it, the goal is something as simple as, I want to send my girl to private school next year. I want to be able to take an extra vacation. I want to work 10 less hours a week. And they may not sound like financial goals, but they end up becoming financial goals so that you're enabled to do those things. So what's really important is to get to the root of the why behind a goal. And for me, financial success is feeling like you're accomplishing all of these goals because of the power of you mastering your financial future, whether that is saving for retirement, or maybe it's buying a vacation home or spending more time with your family. All of that ties to financial success to me. And I think it's a different definition for everybody.
That's great. And so, Tim, when you think about financial success and the clients and the people that you work with, is it more about them measuring what you do for them and how well you do it? Or is it more about having you teach them how to achieve what they want to achieve? Like what's that dance like in your experience?
Sure. What I found out is, like, to Aaron's point, that the people are getting married later. And I also find that they're much more practical and they're much more set in their ways. So they oftentimes come to the meeting with a really good feel for what they want. What they don't really have a feel for it that yet is, okay, we're getting married. Maybe we want to have family. Maybe one of us has to fund childcare or work less or work more. And they want to quantify that. And I think there's just a lot of questions about that. I find like the more they want to quantify what it means if they make this abrupt change because they've been doing what they did. And, to Aaron's point, maybe you get out of college and you get married, you don't really have those set ways. But if you've been working for 10, 15 years, you've accumulated assets, you're making income, you've got a career. It just seems like people are putting more thought into it, and they much more want to quantify it. What does it mean, and what do I have to give up? And to Shannon's point, they're looking for maybe the why, but then also what does it mean in terms of financially?
Sure. And for Aaron, would you say that the work that you do is it preventative? Like, we don't want these things to happen? Or like, what's the proactive side of the work that you're doing now of like, hey, we're doing this so we can achieve this success? Well, tell me what that looks like in the conversations that you're having.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes from both angles. I think that there is a preventative aspect to it as well as kind of a proactive planning aspect to it. I mean, an example from, the preventative standpoint is, one thing that I've noticed with couples who are going through divorce is, couples really don't like when a lot of money goes, is spent without any kind of communication or discussion beforehand. And so, one thing my wife and I did, when she's also a lawyer, when we wrote our prenup, was we put a rule that anytime someone's going to spend more than $500 from the joint account, that we have to have a discussion first. And by creating that rule ahead of time, it doesn't come off as punitive, after someone spent money and the argument has already started, that now we're having to reel back or, exact some punishment on one spouse or the other. And then from the other angle, in terms of, planning, I love what Shannon says about kind of like, getting specific about what your financial priorities are ahead of time and then building your life around that. So an example is, a couple may love travel. Travel is my big thing. And so my wife and I decided we're going to put 5% of all of our take-home income into a travel fund. So that whenever we want to take a trip, the money's already there for it. We're planning for, this dream life that we want to have. For some people, it's a house fund or, a baby fund, or starting, a side business fund. But, you can use this opportunity to kind of map out your future rather than being reactive to, problems after they've already arisen.
Love that.
So, Tim, you have a newly married couple that's just sitting down in front of you. And what are 3 things that you would say to them as a newly married couple that they should begin doing?
Well, first, I want to mention that when I first got married, I came home with a car, and I got a lot of trouble for that. So Aaron, you are totally spot on. I learned quickly that was a bad idea. But I would say what I try to do when I first meet a married couple when they come in or they're about to get married, a lot of it is really talking about how do you spend? Do you each have bank accounts? I think I mentioned, I think more and more after they're married, they're maintaining their separate bank accounts, but we always stress that there needs to be transparent about it. But I think the spending patterns, your philosophy on debt, where are your assets? Where does your bank account and what are your goals? Because we want to help them quantify whether they're getting married, are they planning a family? What's that going to cost? So I think that those are the 3 things, really just trying to identify how they spend, what their philosophy is about debt, and also where they have their assets so we can get a feel for what they've been doing.
And so, Shannon, in adding to that, what are there 3 things that you could say that they could do to achieve those things?
So just like Aaron is a house of lawyers, we're a house of entrepreneurs. So what do? We actually do a quarterly meeting. So we have instituted this idea that at the quarter end, we take stock of all of our money and where it is, and is it doing its job? Meaning, if it's in the checking accounts, it's available to us. If it's in property, how is that going? Like if it's in a rental property, like is all of our money where we want it to be? And can we recalibrate? So we recalibrate every quarter. Where are our assets? Where is our money? And to everyone's point here, we got married at 30, 32. So we were the same. We were the merger of 2 very independent people. So we had a lot of complexity. So I would say that if you're coming into a relationship like that, you should set up some type of routine. Like we said, set up the conversation, put it on the calendar and say, every quarter, we're going to update this thing. Maybe one person is a little more financially inclined to go maintain it, but you have every quarter we update it and we sit down and talk about it. And we go, here's where all our money is. Maybe there's a trip we can take, or maybe there's more in there than we thought. We've been earning interest. And we say, hey, you know what? We do have some extra money in here than what we thought. Let's do something. And we actually get to start there and plan together for the next quarter or for the next year and be engaged in the conversation. So I would say put some time on the calendar to have those meetings. They're actually fun when you can kind of plan and forecast together like what you're going to be doing. And that also takes a lot of the taboo out of it because you're going to have these meetings every quarter. So you don't have to wait until it's not an awkward time to bring it up. The other thing I would say is, like I said, be fully transparent, show all your cards, and actually ask for help. So if one person is a little bit more financially minded and one is a little more insecure about finances, I say don't be afraid to lean on your partner for help. They are there to help you. I can't tell you how many couples I've seen where one has shame and won't admit to the other one how much trouble they're in, or won't admit to the other one, that they don't know something because they are afraid of how they'll be perceived by their partner. So I would say you have to let go of the shame. This person is here to support you and root for you. And the best way is to have these discussions together. Personally, I've seen a lot of couples come to the table with tax debt or tax problems that they don't tell the spouse about, and it causes a ton of stress later. So I would say just being fully transparent from the get-go and creating an environment where you can both share those things with each other. It all anchors back to communication at the end of the day. Those are probably my top tips.
Awesome.
So, I'm curious, and Aaron, maybe you want to start with this one. I'd love to hear from all three of you on this. What are some of the biggest fallacies or false beliefs that people hold about money and finances? Like, what rumors can you guys dispel for everybody today about some of those beliefs?
It, I think a lot of people think that you have to be a financial expert or, to have a say in your home finances. Like Shannon said, there's one person that is, typically going to be, more financially inclined, maybe in a household. And rather than looking at it like that person controls the finances, I like to look at that person more as like the CFO. I know the business people will understand that, where, a CFO is not somebody who is lording over the finances or dictating what happens. They actually serve the good of the company. And so they are required to come back and report on the state of the finances to the other spouse. They have a duty to come back and report to the shareholders or the couple, what's going on with the finances, rather than kind of being in charge of the finances. They should look at themselves like in service to the relationship. So I think, that just because one person has more knowledge about the money, or maybe one person earns more money, doesn't mean that they are the person who should have the power over the money in a household.
I love that idea of the shared concept. Tim, what would you add about that? What are some of the false beliefs that people come to when they're working with you, and what can you help dispel and give us a clear understanding about money and dealing with finances?
I think there's two things. Number one, a lot of people will say that they need more money, or they're not ready to get married, they're not ready to have kids because they haven't accumulated enough. You can never have enough, right? I just think that you don't understand what variables will come at you and hit you, job changes, losses, things like that. So I think sometimes I find people wait longer than they maybe have to, just because they don't feel like they're financially ready. And then the second thing would be, I'm a firm believer in division of duties based on skill sets. If you're buying a house or even buying a car, nothing creates more stress for me than going to a dealership and trying to negotiate a car, whereas my wife likes it. So, division of duties is something that I think you figure out over time. But we've been married, I think, for 37 years. But I think up front, you just got to be open to the fact that you can't do everything, and it's not all going to happen together, and you need to split up some of the jobs.
Sure. Shannon, would you add anything?
I totally agree. Giving up your financial power does not work, because then you're in a more vulnerable position if, God forbid, something were to happen or something doesn't work out, that you're not feeling constrained or tied down to your partner because of something financial. Yeah, that was what I would add, but I echo everything these guys said.
So Shannon, part of being a successful couple, and I'll take it even further, being a successful parent, is really being able to teach our children financial literacy. And I would ask you, how do you go about doing that? Are there tools out there? Are there programs out there? How can we teach our children how to be financially literate?
I love this question so much because it's such a passion of mine. I volunteer and donate to Junior Achievement, which is a phenomenal program nationwide that helps educate children on the fundamentals of money, finance, and entrepreneurship in their schools, which I think is so important, because I can't tell you how many grown adults don't understand our tax system and yet know how to do geometry. So usefulness of skills is key. But to answer your question, I think I would love to apply. I mean, God help, my children are going to hate me when they get older, but my dad did this to me. My dad bought me a stock in Toys R Us instead of a toy. And he said, this is a piece of the whole toy store. And then he used that to teach me what a stock was. And I was 11. And it was like getting socks for Christmas. for sure. If an 11-year-old is like, what the heck is this? I don't understand, like a piece of paper. Can you imagine? Right. But then like 37-year-old me is going, that was awesome. So I think that we have to integrate money into the conversations with children, make sure money is not a hindrance or a reason to say no to something. We can't afford it. Be careful of the language, but also integrating them into money decisions. So one thing I would love to do with my children one day is say, you have a budget of X dollars, like furnish a home or like go. We had to do this in elementary school. We had to go through magazines. Remember when we bought stuff online through catalogs, or not online, but in catalogs? And we had to furnish a home with a certain budget. And we had to be like, we can't afford this couch if we want this kitchen, and we have to balance all this stuff. And we were like in 5th grade. And I think that when you can start having them exercise that part of their brain, which will help them make decisions and understand that you can't have everything. You're going to have to give here to take here. You're going to have to balance this out and make decisions based on money. It really does empower them a lot sooner in life than thinking that it is something that is going to limit them as opposed to help them expand.
That's a terrific answer. Erin, do you have anything you might add to that?
Are you struggling to maintain the emotional and physical intimacy you once shared? Do you feel like you're spending more energy finding fault and tearing your partner down instead of magnifying their good and building them up? Don't worry, you're not alone. Many couples are struggling behind a forced smile and an inauthentic happiness. You feel drained, unheard, and more often than not, unappreciated. The good news is it's not too late to rekindle the flame and strengthen your bond. I'm offering a free relationship assessment call to help you take the first step towards revitalizing your relationship and reaching your own relationship nirvana. Whether you come alone or with your partner, I'm here to help you create the space for a more fulfilling and satisfying relationship. Don't wait any longer. Make the changes you need to thrive. Book your free call today at matthewphoffman.com/coaching. And let's get started on your journey to a kick-ass relationship.
Yeah. I think kind of along the same lines, I like to use the concept of what I call money buckets. So, it's not as important, how much you spend as, what you buy as how much you spend. So, for example, a lot of households will think, okay, we're going to have a joint bank account, but we're each going to get an allowance, quote unquote, that goes into our own separate accounts that we can spend without oversight. And we have, our own say over how we spend it. And you can go further than that. You can set up a money bucket for your child. You can even set, up a money bucket for your pet if you wanted. But for kids, giving them kind of that autonomy and the power to make decisions about how they spend their money rather than coming and asking for permission, for every single time they want a toy or a piece of candy. I think that inherently teaches them how to budget. If I purchase this piece of chocolate, I can't get the Paw Patrol toy I want, later on. You can tell I've got a toddler. And it's, the same thing I think that is healthy for adults, separating out and having, the ability to spend some money the way that you want to spend it can also be healthy for kids. And they learn some of these things naturally through that process.
Tim, do parents sometimes bring their children into your meetings to have them be a small part of the process?
That happens rarely, but it's always on the agenda, and we talk to them a lot about it. One of the tools I've seen used successfully is using just like small donor advised or charitable funds, and basically setting up an account and saying, all right, to your kids or grandkids, it really works very well with grandchildren. You have the ability to give $1,000 to some nonprofit, go out and research and come back to us and tell us why. What it does is it creates collaboration among the family. It allows parents and grandparents to pass the legacy information about where the money came from. And it also teaches them giving back, and it is they're really good learning lessons. So I just think that's one tool that I've seen used. And when we talk to clients, parents and grandparents, we always kind of throw that out there as one way for them to connect and pass along legacy and financial skills.
So, Erin, we talked a little bit about the whole concept of prenups, and Shannon mentioned it too. Oh, and by the way, Erin, I forgot to say earlier, Kim and I have that agreement about the $500 limit. Like, neither of us are spending 500 unless we've talked to the other one, right? And so that's a rule that we came up with. So it's a good practice. It does work. And I think we even do it for lesser amounts because we're both nervous about,
I know.
not nervous, but concerned about making decisions unilaterally, right? But so, prenuptial agreements are a sticky subject. In fact, I have a personal story about that I won't go into right now. But how do we, in the conversation that you and I had originally about this, it's not just about who has what and who's going to get what, right? How do we look at that in a fresh way where it's advantageous as opposed to the stigma that so many people associate with it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't have a conversation about prenups without acknowledging the stigma that's around it. I mean, people just hear the word prenup and they immediately have a visceral reaction to it. I look at a prenup as like a partnership agreement for your marriage. A prenup is a set of rules that governs what happens, how the finances are treated both during the marriage and after. And I think, the public perception is that it is just, a plan for divorce. I look at a prenup as kind of, setting out a lot of these rules and the rules of the rules of the road, the shareholders agreement, that sounds like Shannon has, on her calendar the same way that I do, the rules about, spending limits that a lot of us have. Kind of defining what your relationship with money is going to be in your household. You wouldn't, if you think about the analogy of a partnership agreement, you wouldn't start a business with somebody and say, we'll figure out, who owns what percentage of the business or what everyone's rights and responsibilities are in this business. Only way down the road if this business splits up. You want to have, and not everyone has to get a prenup, but you have to have the conversations about what each person's rights and responsibilities are. What accounts are you paying bills from? Is your income going to go into your separate accounts and then flow into your joint account? Or is it going to go into your joint account? And then you each get an allowance that goes into your separate account. And I think that starting the conversation, instead of just launching it and saying, oh, we need a prenup, you start from the angle of what you want to actually accomplish. Would it be a good idea for us to be transparent about our assets and debts and income coming in to our relationship? Would it be a good idea for us to sit down and have a quarterly or at minimum an annual meeting where we discuss a certain agenda of financial topics in our household? Should we have spending limits? Should we set aside, a travel budget or a baby budget? And then, yes, like any good partnership agreement or business agreement, what happens if things go wrong? Can we lock in a fair resolution that we can both agree on while we love each other and communication and trust is high? Rather than leave ourselves to, potentially our worst impulses, down the line when communication has been lost, trust has been lost, we're angry at each other, we want to punish each other, and lock in a fair resolution at the beginning of our relationship. If you believe that everything is equal and it should be 50-50, then you can put that down on paper at the beginning of your relationship and take it off of the table.
Right. I mean, there's always the situation where one person might come in very wealthy, right? And that can create a lot of stress. It can create conflict within the relationship. And so I think setting that out in the very beginning is huge for a relationship.
So, Tim, do you have anything to add to that about that concept? I'm sure that's something that you deal with in your practice and working with people. And what thoughts do you have about, or how does that come up, or does it when you're talking about wealth management and financial planning?
So it does come up, and what I've learned is the importance of a team approach. And I need to bring people like Aaron and Shannon into meetings with me, because I've tried to discuss the, prenuptials in particular, and I've failed at it. And part of it's I don't have one, so it's not personal. I've not gone through it. So I always stress that we need to bring in people like Aaron, like Shannon, other experts who have that skill set and who can explain it and implement it and do a much better job. Because I see the value in it, and I have clients who have them, but they have them because I've brought other team members in, other professionals in to help with the process.
Anything else you'd like to add to that concept, Shannon?
No, I think you guys covered it great.
Okay. And I wanted to share with you too that I know Kim's going to jump in a sec, but we, at Kickass Couples Nation, there's been an evolution. We do relationship coaching, and we have this podcast, and the things that we've understood and determined that Kim and I have done for ourselves is we'll talk more about our 14 pillars later in those, but the first three of those are the three C's, which are commitment, communication, and conflict resolution. We've actually done what we called an RMC, a relationship Magna Carta, where we've spent time together saying, what does commitment look like? What do we want it to look like in our relationship? And what does it look like in action? And then written down the things that we are going to agree to do for each other relative to commitment and relative to communication and relative to conflict resolution. So we have a document that says that. So when one of us is not necessarily happy or concerned, like we can say, hey, I don't think we are doing a great job of this together. And we developed it together. No one told us to do it or how to do it, but it was our agreement on what Aaron was saying earlier, our roles and responsibilities of how we're going to work together to both get what we want and support each other. And I think everybody's really good in relationships and talking about what they want, but when we get to the how, that's when it seems to get sticky because there's different viewpoints, opinions, and experience on that process. So I appreciate what you all have said about that concept.
Shannon, I have a question for you. What do entrepreneurs get wrong when they are trying to grow their business?
How long do you have?
So that's a loaded question, I know. But
top three.
Yeah, if you had to really narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 points,
Yeah,
what is it
absolutely.
that they get wrong?
I would say, honestly, I think that most entrepreneurs plan for the present and not the future. So what they're doing is behaving reactively, saying, I'm not big enough yet to insert good behavior here, right? I'm not big enough yet to hire an accountant. I'm not big enough yet to get good bookkeeping. I'm not big enough yet to focus on X, Y, and Z that's going to grow my business. And I think that they keep themselves small. It's a limiting belief that I'm just this little thing. It's just a side hustle. It's just a startup. And then they don't behave at that next level to be able to grow their business. And I think that if you keep yourself small and you tell yourself the story of this is what I am today, instead of looking at what your potential is, that's a big factor. And I think that leads to certain things very tactically, like not having good bookkeeping and not having any type of professional assistance to help get you set up so that you're not really setting yourself up on a good financial foundation.
And Tim, as a planner, what would you add to what Shannon is saying?
I find I work to a great extent with commercial contractors, plumbing, heating, etc. And I find a lot of these owners are accidental owners. They were great plumbers, and they just, for any number of reasons, they created their own plumbing contracting firm, and then they just do everything, and as a result, the clients talk to them. So part of it is just not letting go and realizing you have to delegate and you have to hire and staff some of the positions. And then the other part too is from the book E-Myth, where you really need to budget and set aside time to step back and look at the business and work on it as opposed to in it day to day.
Great advice. So I'm going to do a little rapid fire, one word fill in the blank with all three of you. And Aaron, I'm going to start with you, but you're all going to get the same question. So those going second and third have a little advantage. So what's the most important thing, Aaron, for financial success in a relationship? You're going to give me one word. What is that word?
Communication. Everything builds off of that, I think.
Okay.
Great answer.
Shannon, what about you? Most important thing for financial success is?
I would say clarity. It was not an advantage to go second because he took mine, but I would say communication, but then clarity, because I think you need to be sure of what you want and be able to express it.
All right.
Good answer.
All right. Thank you. Come up to you, Tim. What is the most important thing?
I'll go with the number one pillar, and that's commitment. You put down the goal, put down what you want to accomplish, but you have to be committed to it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you, Aaron, are there any financial concepts or questions that we haven't asked that you might feel a burning desire to answer?
What should we hit?
Yeah, what have we missed?
I really love the the business analogy of of looking at a relationship. And I know that I am, the founder of prenups.com, but even if couples don't get a prenup or it's too late for them, I don't think that it is, a bad idea. You guys talked about having your Magna Carta, and I think that putting things down in writing, there's just, it takes on another level of significance. Writing down the budget, writing down what your goals are with each other, and having really like a playbook for your finances is so important. You can't build off of it. You can't edit it. It allows you to look back on it in the future and see, what did we agree to this time last year or the year before? Documenting what it is that you're doing, I think is critically important.
Yeah, it's like another level of accountability to me. We did this Magna Carta and then we realized we didn't sign it. I'm like, we have to sign it. Doesn't mean anything if we didn't sign it.
John Hancock. That's right.
But having that accountability is important.
So we're going to do, Tim's done a great job of this, and the others, I'm going to ask you to get real specific. We have those 14 pillars that we spoke about. I'd love for each of y'all to look at that list. And we've talked about commitment. We've talked about communication. As you look at those other 12 that are on there, which one do you think, or would you say, hey, I think this is a real important quality when it comes to finances, and here's why? So Shannon, what would you pick off that list?
I'm going to go with a very non-traditional approach and say number 14, fun and humor. Hear me out. Because finances and money is like eating your broccoli. You need the Velveeta or the ranch. You have to find ways to make it tolerable. But here's the thing. It's about rephrasing and reframing. So I would say that I do this with my clients all the time. Instead of a budget, call it a profit plan. Instead of the prenup, call it like a mission statement. Sit down and come up with what are the goals in a positive way. How do we integrate a little bit more of positivity into it so that we can start focusing on the good that will come of this and the benefits, as opposed to the work we have to do to put in now? And I think that gets missed a lot. Is it sounds like a lot of things that we have to go do this and we have to go do this and we have to go meet with this professional or this professional, but it's actually a fun experience to share that with each other. And I think that actually creates intimacy. It creates the communication because you have a deeper connection because you've shared these deep desires with each other and come up with a plan to make it happen.
Yeah, it's like eating dessert first.
Yeah.
Great answer. Aaron, swinging around to you. As you look at that list, what one sticks out to you and how does it apply to our subject today?
I would say selflessness. My observation has been that in any relationship where each spouse is literally doing exactly 50% of the work, each spouse feels like they're doing 70% of the work. There's something about the relationship where, the other spouse's contributions, which can be financial or non-financial, are invisible to us. But we see everything that we contribute to the relationship. And I think that if you go in with a spirit of selflessness, where you say, you know what, I'm going to do my best to give 2/3, to give 70% to this relationship, that's a better way to go about it than trying to keep score and make sure that, your spouse is doing their fair share in the relationship.
Yeah, that's a great point. Appreciate that. And Tim, you've been great about some references throughout our talking today, but is there another pillar that sticks out to you that you enjoy either in your own relationship or working with your clients that you think is apropos?
Yeah, I'm going to go with security because security is so different for every client that I work with because money is so emotional and everyone's money personality is so different. For example, I have clients who just only believe that whatever is in the bank is their financial security. The rest of it is just, it gives them hives. They just don't want to talk about it at all. And you can force them to talk about it, but you're just going to, I don't know that that's beneficial over time. So I would say finding out what security means to each person financially and emotionally. And as part of that, I'm an advisor, but I always try to have another person come in like a coach. Hopefully they'll work with a coach because I can give them advice, but a coach, I think, can draw out really what they want and help them understand and find it themselves. So it just takes a lot of people, I think, to make this whole thing work.
Great thoughts. We appreciate everybody sharing. You guys have been fantastic with us today, and we could keep going for
I
a long
know.
time. And we've got a brain trust here with so much goodness in it, but y'all have been fantastic. And we'd like to know if people want to learn more about you, if they want to work with you or talk to you or find out the things that you're doing out there. I'm going to start with you, Shannon. Where should they go to connect with you?
So if you're a podcast listener, which I hope you are if you're here, you can check out Keep What You Earn. It's my podcast, available on all platforms. We release episodes daily and would love to have you listen to that as well.
Terrific. And for Aaron?
Yeah, your listeners can come check us out at prenups.com, and we are at Prenup Guy on all the social media platforms.
And Tim?
So I also have a podcast that's called Wealth Stream. They can reach me there, or Hightower Great Lakes. They can just go to our website, check it out, and reach out. There's a lot of resources there.
You guys have been fantastic. We are so grateful for your time today. I know that our listeners have gained a wealth of knowledge, so thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been fun.
We look forward to sharing this with you and your listeners and our listeners, and keep working together. And we just want to close today with y'all remembering one thing.
Happily ever after doesn't just happen. It's on purpose.
Thank you for joining us today.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.